You know, when I was younger, Boba Fett was my favorite bounty hunter. I thought he was so cool, so tough, and the baddest character in the entire Outer Rim. The cold, calculating hunter that we got from him in the original trilogy, as short as that may have been, or the spry, resourceful kid we saw in the Clone Wars, bent on revenge and payback. And heck, I even read the random freaking miniseries that they made about him that was at my local library. That's how much I liked him. And by the way, if you read the miniseries, you know it's fire. So you can imagine that a few years ago now, when Disney announced that they were making a show entirely dedicated to Boba Fett and his life after the Sarlacc pit, I was hyped. At long last, the legend himself has his time to shine. And when the show ended up actually dropping in late 2021, you better believe I was there to watch it. But then Disney did, well, what Disney does best. They took one of the coolest bounty hunters to ever exist and turned him into a weak, pathetic shell of a man that no one in their right mind would think was cool or care about. I know that this came out almost 4 years ago now, but you guys clearly don't mind when I step back into time for a minute to talk about stuff like this. And I recently rewatched some of the Book of Boba Fett because apparently I enjoy being miserable, and it gave me a new appreciation for just how terrible this was, and I just felt like I needed to talk about it. Without further ado, today I'm going to talk about how Disney destroyed Boba Fett's character and turned one of the coolest characters in Star Wars into a weak loser. Let's get into it. Fundamentally, the core problem with the Book of Boba Fett is that Disney wanted to make a show that spotlighted one of the most popular characters from their entire franchise, but they didn't like the fact that that character was a bad guy. So they decided that the best solution was to just flip a switch and make him a good guy. And safe to say, it did not work out. This has been part of a larger revisionist history narrative from Disney for a few years now, and if you've been paying attention, then you may have seen stuff like them canonically renaming Slave One to Boba Fett's starship because, God forbid, Boba Fett, the ruthless bounty hunter who only looks out for himself and profit, would have had anything to do with the galactic slave trade. Yeah, that makes no sense whatsoever. He's a good man who likes cupcakes and rainbows and the finer things in life. And sure, maybe in his past he did some bad stuff, but you don't understand, he's always had a good heart. He's always been a good man at heart, and now we can reveal that to the world through the Book of Boba Fett. And yeah, it doesn't work. If you're gonna make a show about Boba Fett, you need to commit and accept that he is a ruthless character who cares about himself and only himself and will do anything to get the job done. Yeah, sure, he does good things every now and then, and he does have his code of honor that he lives by, but that doesn't mean he's a good person. However, Disney didn't do any of that whatsoever. They actually did the exact opposite. In this show, instead of being a hardened man who looks out for himself, Boba Fett is genuinely just the nicest, most tolerating man that you could ever imagine. It is genuinely not the same character at all that we know and love. Essentially, after the events of Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett barely escapes out of the Sarlacc pit, and when he does, he's captured by Tusken Raiders. After he earns their respect by saving a Tusken child that was gonna get killed by a sand creature, he basically gets accepted into the tribe, and he learns the way of the Tusken. He's friends with all of them, he gets his own gaffy stick, and this is supposed to be the reason that Boba Fett turns nice, because he has his people now. This premise makes no sense whatsoever on its face. The Tuskens, for all of Star Wars, have been shown to be a very violent people. They kill or enslave anyone they come upon, any threat to their territory is met by violence, and they are a savage and barbaric culture. So when Boba Fett is accepted into the tribe and he has friends now, it does not stand to reason at all that this would make him a nice guy. It just doesn't. Sure, it could have made him see the value in being part of a group and the value of protecting the people that you care about, but I would argue that in no way would it elicit the kind of character growth that we ended up seeing between Return of the Jedi and Book of Boba Fett. It makes no sense. When Boba Fett takes control of Jabba's old empire, he literally becomes a saint overnight. He's forgiving, even to an assassin that sneaks into his palace in the middle of night and tries to kill him. He's honorable. Once he makes a deal, he never goes back on it and will go out of his way to do no wrong to the people involved, even if they don't care about sticking to their word whatsoever. He loves animals, guys. I mean, just look at how nice he is to the Rancor. A guy who loves animals can never be a bad man. That's so sweet. If someone questions Boba's authority or talks back to him in front of other people, even people that he's in charge of and he's the leader of and whose respect he needs to be in control, he will always step down and let them speak their mind, no matter how weak or pathetic it makes him look. And the list goes on and on and on. But the point that I'm making is that A, it's simply not the Boba Fett that we all grew up with and loved, and B, it's boring. It is boring to watch a nice guy walk around doing nice things, especially when it's not the character that we expect him to be. It's just boring. It's not interesting to watch. And to make matters worse, throughout the entire show, Boba's sidekick is the bounty hunter Fennec Shand, whose life Boba saved a while ago, and in return, it now acts as like a bodyguard slash advisor to Boba. However, the reason this adds insult to injury is because Fennec Shand is actually cooler than Boba Fett in his own show. She's smarter than him, she's more ruthless and cunning than him, she's a better fighter than him, which also reminds me, another total downgrade in the show is how bad Boba Fett is in a fight. He's old, he's slow, he's fatter now than he used to be, he gets overwhelmed really easily, and it's genuinely kind of pathetic to watch. Disney's version of Boba Fett has exactly one cool fight scene, and it's not even in his own show, it's in The Mandalorian, when he takes out like 50 stormtroopers. And even in that scene, yeah, it's pretty cool, sure, but the stormtroopers are so comically incompetent, even for stormtroopers, that it doesn't even seem like Boba is that good. He's just slightly better than these walking targets. I just don't understand what Disney's angle was here. They must have all been in the boardroom together like, okay guys, here's the deal. Let's make a show about Boba Fett. Everyone loves Boba Fett, but let's switch it around, give him a heart to rival Mother Teresa's. And on top of that, let's make him a boring nice guy, and also not very smart or cunning, and hear me out, here's the main kicker, he can't even fight that well. I know, please, hold the applause, this is gonna do numbers, guys, we just made a genius show. Like, I don't get it, this should have been a slam dunk for them, and they still somehow missed. It's Boba Fett, just make him a cool bounty hunter, and you're gonna be fine. Instead, I don't know how you messed this up, but they did. Give it to Disney, they did. And don't forget that within the show itself, there are 2 whole episodes that have literally nothing to do with Boba Fett. Oh yeah, that's how little the writers cared about his story. One of the episodes is just the Mandalorian losing the Darksaber and getting a new ship, and the other is about Ahsoka Tano and CGI Luke Skywalker training Grogu. And again, this is smack dab in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett. The show has 7 episodes total, and 2 of them do not have Boba Fett in them whatsoever. Clearly, the creators didn't have faith that they could get viewers based on the story alone. No, we gotta throw in some classic characters for old time's sake. And then, to top it all off, Disney did something that, in my book, is almost a bigger crime than what they did to Boba Fett's character. In the second to last episode, who should get involved but Cad Bane, my personal favorite bounty hunter in Star Wars, and definitely one of the coolest, toughest, and most ruthless. In the show, the Pike Crime Syndicate wants to take over Boba Fett's territory on Tatooine, so they hired Cad Bane to help defeat Boba Fett, but for some reason, the creators of the show thought that Boba Fett and Cad Bane were like old enemies or something. They treat them like they've been rivals for decades, when in reality, these guys have basically never interacted in all of Star Wars. The only thing we know they have in common from the movies and TV shows, that is, maybe there's a book about them, I don't know, but the only thing we know they have in common is they were in that prison on Coruscant together at the same time when Obi-Wan breaks in to get Moralo Eval and Cad Bane out in the Clone Wars. That's the only time they've ever been in the same place, as far as we know. Sure, maybe they have a deeper history or like a working relationship in some random third-party book, but come on, you know, that's super niche and obscure, and the average viewer isn't gonna have read that. But the Book of Boba Fett hypes up this rivalry like it's Rocky and Apollo Creed. You'd think that these guys have been at each other's throats for decades. Anyway, there's a huge battle in the last episode of the show with like Boba riding the Rancor, cause look guys, he's still cool, we promise. And some massive droideka, cause don't you remember those from the Clone Wars, guys? Holy cow, the more I talk about this show, the more mad I get. It was such a terrible story with occasional bits of fan service thrown in to be like, guys, look, it's Star Wars, remember? Droideka, the Rancor, Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka, the Mandalorian, please watch our show. The final scene of the battle is the legendary confrontation of Cad Bane and Boba Fett. Oh, 2 old rivals, except they're not, meeting once again, except they've never met before in any movie or TV show that we've seen, to settle this once and for all, except they never actually had beef together to begin with. And to the writer's credit, Cad Bane does almost win, as he should, because Cad Bane at this point should be 100 times stronger and more skilled than Boba Fett. I mean, he's been living large and honing his skills this whole time, while Boba has been mucking around with the Sand People and being a nice guy to the other crime lords in Tatooine, who, by the way, all betrayed him in this battle because they have no respect for him whatsoever, but whatever. Cad Bane takes the upper hand and gets Boba Fett on the ground, and then starts saying dialogue that makes no sense at all. Like, he tells Boba, you tried to go straight, but you have too much of your father's blood pumping through your veins. Wow, what a terrible Cad Bane impression. I'm sorry you had to hear that. But what the frick does that have to do with anything? I mean, you could say that line if Boba had tried to be a nice guy and failed, but this entire show, he's done nothing but be a nice guy. Never once has he been a bad guy. And then Cad Bane follows up with, and I'm sorry in advance for butchering his voice, consider this my final lesson, as he's about to administer the killing blow. But you were never his teacher! When did you ever teach him a lesson? Such a weird thing to say, and it makes no sense. Anyway, then naturally, Boba surprises Cad Bane with his gaffy stick, gets the advantage, and kills him. Nice job, guys, nice job. You brought in one of the most underused and coolest characters in Star Wars, put him in 1.5 episodes, and then killed him off. Brilliant, simply brilliant. Maybe, just maybe, this whole Boba Fett Cad Bane rivalry dynamic could have worked if Cad Bane had been the main antagonist for the entire show, a villain that was built up the whole way through, but for whatever reason, they literally only brought him in to get killed in the final episode. Overall, from beginning to end, this show was a complete disaster. The story sucked and made no sense, even though they tried to artificially make it seem good with a million random cameos and throwbacks, including 2 whole episodes that Boba Fett wasn't in. They brought in Cad Bane just to kill him off within the time frame of 1.5 episodes of a show he absolutely did not need to be a part of, and to top it all off, they took Boba Fett, one of the most legendary and iconic characters in Star Wars, a ruthless bounty hunter that the fans have loved for decades, and they made him a boring loser who oozes weakness and has no authority whatsoever. Icing on the cake, what more can you expect from Disney? And speaking of not having authority, that reminds me of another Star Wars character, Admiral Holdo, who is a terrible leader and a terrible character. And I actually made a whole video about her and why she sucks, and the hold up maneuver and why that sucks, which you can check out right here. I think you'll really like it, I'm very proud of it, and I think you should check it out. Thanks for watching, boys, have a good one, see you later, bye.